Thank you for tuning in to the Natty News Daily podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Core Nutritionals. You can check out corenutritionals.com for all your supplement needs and use code Natty News Daily at checkout to save 20%. Enjoy the episode.
What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. The boys are all here tonight. No solo episodes, no one missing, this whole 9 yards. We've been hammering away after Worlds, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Obviously, if you guys are keeping up to date with everything, you would have saw the podcast with Benjamin, with Josh, with Brian. We've been trying to keep you guys up to date with everything going on, but obviously, we want to talk about Worlds a little bit more formally. I know James has touched on it in some of his news videos, and obviously on the page, we've done our best to document it, but we've had people kind of wanting to know our thoughts on things, our opinions on it, our viewpoints on it, what we thought of the whole extravaganza. So let's just dive on in. I think it's safe to say this is probably the most hyped Worlds in a good chunk of time. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a couple of the other podcasts were talking about it, right? Like, obviously everyone knows, Iron Culture, Revive Stronger, Improvement Season, whichever you want to call it. They all kind of mentioned that this was the first year where it's kind of like you finally brushed off the like post-COVID hangover, where it's like, yeah, things are getting back. Like, this was full force. This was like 100% bodybuilding season, no reservations, and it was cool to see for sure.
Yep. I think that, like, when you think of a Worlds competition, you imagine that being people from all around the world, right? And every organization has their big show, their world championships or whatever they dub it as. And unfortunately, that the world championships as a term doesn't always reflect what you see on stage. But this year, man, like, people from all over the globe were on that stage. And I think, like, as a viewer, it was just like top to bottom. There was talent both on the amateur show and the pro show. Like, there was just, a lot. And now that we are obviously playing our role as Natty News, I'm a lot more familiar with a lot of the competitors, both amateur and pro. And it was just really cool to see, just across every division, every class, like talented athletes. Like, if you did well at Worlds, like, you were legit, like, Worlds for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Anywhere top 5 or even close to top 5 in most of those classes is like, you should be proud.
Yeah, like some of those class sizes, we've seen in recent years, like, some of them dwindle to like 6, 7, 8 guys, and we were seeing classes of 16, 20, like that's awesome to see, especially like you said, kind of that COVID lull that bodybuilding was in for a while. And I know for international competitors, it was probably even harder the last couple of years to compete at these like North American shows, which obviously would then hinder your representation of a true Worlds. But when you have people from, the UK and Australia and, Canada, America, like all over the place coming to that one collective stage, it was definitely something to see. It was, if you didn't watch it, you missed out.
I would love to know, like, the actual breakdown of countries that were there, because I remember, like, there were Cayman Islands, the New Zealand, if you want to call like Erica New Zealander now, right? Ireland, Australia, like there was a lot of representation from all over, and not even just like the usual ones per se.
Yeah. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it was high quality show. I was really impressed with what they did with the production, with the lighting. They really put these athletes in the proper lighting, right? No pun intended. I mean, showcased the best of the best. I mean, I think it was the most competitive show of the year. Most stacked lineups, deepest lineups, and you put them in on a great stage with great lighting and presented them as, as good as they really are, right?
No, for sure.
That photo of, we were talking off air beforehand about that photo of Frederick and Benjamin, and I mean, they look just nasty. Like, it's just sick. Like, that's what natural bodybuilding is, and I mean, that generated a lot of hype, and I think it just put a real, really good stamp on what natural bodybuilding is at the highest level, right?
Yeah. That's something we talked about beforehand in numerous podcasts, was lighting and the impact that could have on certain competitors placing more or less than maybe they would under normal circumstances. And, when you get that really good lighting, that really good production, like then as judges, as spectators, as fans, like you get a true representation of what the athletes are wanting you to see. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing worse than when the lighting isn't great, and as an athlete, you're out there on stage and you see photos and you're like, man, that's not even me, right? That's not a reflection. And especially at the high level, when you have athletes like Dan mentioned, like Frederick and Benjamin, Dirk, Brian, umpteen other athletes that were in amazing condition on that day, like it was so incredible to see. And for those athletes to not be able to display that, which not only hurts them, but it hurts the sport, right? Because people are seeing these photos and it hurts natural bodybuilding, because they're like, oh, like they look okay.
Natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, natural bodybuilding. Yeah. But from our page, we can obviously look at the analytics and stuff, and like that photo of Benjamin and Frederick, photos of Dirk, Natalie that have been shared nearly 100 times, and you can guarantee people who don't follow the sport have seen those. And based on our follower count, people are turning their head being like, oh shit, like, and these guys are natural. And I saw someone tag Phil Viz, who's like a pretty well-known coach in the enhanced realm, and he's like, yeah, like they don't hesitate to get in shape. And I think that's where, if you give athletes that platform to display at the highest level, which they did, you will see people start to kind of maybe invest a bit more, because then it's not just, oh yeah, they're natural, of course they don't look as good. Like, no, you see the natural guys at the highest level being able to show themselves at the highest level with the video production. Like their live stream was fantastic. Their camera guy that did all the camera work was incredible. The lighting, everything. It's only giving the sport more opportunity to grow. And kudos to the WNBF, because I know in the past, and we've not shied away from talking about this, that wasn't a strong point. Even last year's Worlds, the lighting was not great. And if you were to compare them, you'd think it's a whole different organization altogether based on the production value alone. And I think like you will only see more athletes, because I've talked to athletes through our page that have been like, man, like I want to go there next year. Same thing after Mr. America, right? Because of the production, people are like, yo, I want to go on that stage. I was talking to Josh about that on the podcast, where it's like, man, like I'd love to see you at Mr. A, because it's a show that's going to allow you to showcase yourself. It takes anybody and everybody, but Worlds, like WNBF Worlds, stamp themselves as still being like, that upper echelon within the sport, right? Because it's all about that display, right? What can you make it look so legit? And they did a damn good job.
They fixed a lot of the critiques from last year, right? We talked about the lighting already, we talked about the stream, but even just the simple things of like splitting the show into 2 days.
Yep.
I mean, we've no diss to Mark with the Mr. A, but like that show has been long a couple times, and that's something he's even talked about doing as it continues to grow. But like for anyone that's been to a show and seen it and like been backstage the whole day, like, man, you're exhausted. And even when those physiques are fantastic towards the end of the day, you just kind of lose a little bit of that like excitement, because you're just so beat down. So breaking it up into 2 days where you don't lose that, I think is huge, right? Because you want everyone to be like energetic about it, not just like, all right, let's get through this. I've been here for 14 hours. I'm done.
Sure. Yeah. Even for the athletes, right? Like, when you're trying to keep that top look for hours and hours and hours, like it's just hard. It's draining. It's physically, it's mentally tiring to like maintain that level of like mental hype. I find like, especially as a coach, like when I have athletes who are on stage for prejudging at 8 or 9 in the morning, and then all back at finals at 6 p.m. to try to maintain their like intensity levels and excitement and everything for what they're doing is tricky. And that can affect your look, right? If you're like mentally not in it, well, you can count on seeing it.
Well, and regardless of if I've been like a fan, spectator, coach, athlete, commentator, I feel like every show I go to, I just feel hungover the next day from like the
Yeah.
amount of hype and then that
Yeah.
just
The
crash,
adrenaline
Yeah.
dumps.
You just dump and you're like awful the next day. But also just kind of like coming back a little bit, the structure of that 2 day show presents itself with some unique opportunities like we saw, right? Natalie,
Yeah.
Miss America, Yorton Cup winner, winning her WNBF pro card one day and then winning the pro title the next day, right? Like those are
Which is
awesome
wild.
stories. It's ridiculous in
Yeah,
itself.
shout
But
out to Natalie, because I know she's likely gonna watch this. And
yes, we hope.
just yeah, we hope. But like massive kudos, because like Dan and I are like watching the live stream and like messaging each other back and forth. We're like, she gonna do it? She might do it. She's gonna do it. Holy shit, she might win it. Yeah, she's moved to the middle. She's definitely doing it. And it was just like, I
Which
think
stark contrast, just I don't know if you guys even realize this. It was opening day of hunting season, and I'm a big hunter. So like I'm sitting in my tree stand, check my phone, it's like 85 notifications. I'm like, nah, I can't do this right now. I'm not doing it.
but
Just
I think
ding, 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 ding.
yeah, I think that's where I just thought of this now. Every like sport or like anything, there's people to follow. There's personalities to follow. People get invested in. And I think that's maybe like a small missing link of natural bodybuilding is like people want to follow journeys, right? They want to see the rise, they want to see the win. Like how many people watched Dirk win in 2021 and he was like, "Yep, 2 years off, pro debut 2023 and I'm going to go to Worlds and I'm going to win the title." And like all of us have been following Dirk since that time, and to just see that progress. And now like Natalie, like we've followed her season, right? We saw her at Mr. A. She won Yorton Cup and we're like, man, she's coming to Worlds. Like that's sweet. Imagine if she could do it. And then Saturday turns pro. And you're like, man, like what if she does this? So if the sport continues to grow, and again, like kind of back to like our original subject matter of like giving them a platform to display and people get invested in, like I'm just going to use the term characters, because that's kind of anything you watch a movie, you get invested in the character, right? You watch anything, any sport, like you follow that journey. You know what I mean? And like for Brian now, like to have an understanding of his backstory and why he wanted to do this and the level to that, like now people are going to be like, wow, like let's see if he can like retain the title. Or Bada, you know, there's probably a group of people who are like, man, Bada's redemption story, the redemption arc, I can't wait to watch. Like, can he win it back? Those are the kind of things that I think like hopefully we can have an opportunity to help grow for people and share those things. And you know, through the podcast, right, is give people an opportunity to share those things. You know, for anybody that watched the podcast with Josh Krogan, who won the middle men's physique class, like he was talking about through his season, like people that were like had beat him out and people he had competed with prior that were like coming to a close at Worlds. And he was like saying, he's like, I had these like 3 or 4 enemies and I called it like the trials of Josh at Worlds, where he had to like knock 4th place out, 3rd place out, 2nd place out and come to that win. You know, those are the things that I think will really like amplify the sport even more, is people that follow the athlete and get invested in the journey.
We need ambassadors. That's what it is, right? We need people that are vocal about the sport and that like wear that title with pride, right? And that's something that I don't know if we've had recently. You know, you got to get the, like you said, the character. And it's funny you say that, because that's like Silas's whole thing, right? Like Dan and I know him pretty well. Like he is a character through and through. He puts on the persona. He has his whole like journey and his whole arc the entire time, and it's awesome to watch, you know. So I hope more people start to like embrace that a little bit, not just be so like introverted and like hide, right? Like if we want the sport to grow, can't just be us 3 talking about it the whole time. You need your champions of the federations to be present so that people know who they are, right? You can't just be like, all right, they won, we don't see them for another year.
Yeah. And again, like if we can be that platform for people, and you know, obviously some people are more social media inclined than others, and you know, like with vlogs and that kind of stuff, but even these podcasts where you can learn a bit more about people. You know, there's guys and girls that we interview where I followed them for so long, and I come out of the podcast being like, man, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know it meant that much to you, or I didn't know it was that deep, or you went through that tribulation with relationships, or someone passed away or whatever, and that kind of stuff. And that's what gets people invested and wanting to follow along, because I think the overarching theme of people just wanting to see people succeed is always present. But if you don't know kind of the hurdles that they go through, you get more invested when you watch the come up than just someone coming in and kicking the door in. You know what I mean? Like, you want to see the underdog story, or even just the rise, right? Like Dirk, you know what I mean? Like, the amount of, God, he posted the other day, his account was like 1.3 million reach, which is nuts. But that was just like so many people that knew about him, shared his stuff, from like gave him all the praise in the world, and rightfully so, because he brought it. But there was probably a large portion of that you know, we're like, man, like, I remember him winning in 2021, and now to come all that way and to win a world championship, you know, you saw it on the live stream, he friggin' broke down in tears. Like, that's how much it meant to him. And when you can like emotionally tap into that and watch that happen, like, it's just makes everything so much better.
I always like in these moments to kind of like think of like who are the first people I saw? Because for somebody, it could be Dirk, it could be Brian, right? They could stumble into the sport and like that's the person that they see. And it's just so funny to like have those like relations and watch that person evolve. And as you come into the sport and see, like, you know, you end up meeting them, being friends with them, being peers with them, and then you see the next generation do the kind of same kind of thing. It's always just fun to think back.
Yeah. Well, I remember, like, I think Berto was kind of like my first real exposure to, like, you know, natural bodybuilding. You know what I mean? Like, I come up with the Flex magazines and that kind of stuff, and, you know, your Phil Heath, your Kai Green, and that generation of athletes. And I was obviously not dumb to the fact that they were enhanced, but that was like my exposure to bodybuilding. I didn't know otherwise. And then, you know, through maybe even like bodybuilding.com or early Instagram days, you know, that photo of his most muscular that probably got shared around a bajillion times when I
think we all saw it around the same year.
Yeah, when I was like, you know, 18, 19 years old, and I was like, whoa, like, this guy's natural. And then, you know, you start to expand on that, and, you know, like you said, we're now friends, you know what I mean, which is super cool. I remember freaking out when he told me that, like, when I messaged him about early days podcast, he was like, yeah, man, I'll come on. I'm like, you want to talk to me? Like, that's so
made
cool.
It.
Yeah, we made it. But yeah, like, for sure, you know, all the athletes coming up that, you know, women's bodybuilding is a good subject matter, because it's for so long been like non-existent to a certain extent, right? Like, we saw a good turnout Mr. A Worlds this year. Like WNBF Calgary, I think, had a good showing with that. Like, it's on the rise. And when you have athletes, like, to come back to Natalie, who are at the forefront of that people, like, they're like, holy shit, like, that's like natural. And you're like, yeah, man, like, that's dedication and consistent effort. Then all these younger female athletes are going to go like, okay, maybe there's opportunities here, and I don't have to like feel like there's no point because there's no competition, right?
And I think that in itself almost reflects some of like a societal trend. I think we're seeing more and more like younger female athletes get into lifting, enjoy lifting for the sake of lifting, and trying to get like strong and muscular, right? And it's pretty cool to see, even in the powerlifting scene. Like, I'm a little bit in that, you know, not as much as bodybuilding, obviously, but just watching some of the like the figureheads or the characters in that side of the sport, setting a good example, I think, honestly. And that's almost where, I don't know if I'm just biased or not, but are we seeing a shift of like the more muscular female classes taking over and bikini kind of falling to the wayside in the natural realms, at least? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, it would be very interesting, because, like, if you start to see the numbers continue to climb in those, even maybe not bodybuilding, but like you look at like figure, or within WNBF, like fit body, where it's that, again, that bit more muscular, where like strong is sexy, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like a term that gets thrown around a lot, but where muscles become cool, right? Like, you know, you look at these athletes, and, you know, I think a lot of girls are afraid they're not going to look like feminine and stuff like that. And on stage, of course, you're like, holy shit, these girls are jacked. But I'm sure if you saw most of them, you'd be like, oh yeah, like she's in great shape. But it's not like,
It's
when
not
you look,
grotesque. It's
yeah,
not
you look
like
at the
IFBB,
yeah, you look at the enhanced side of the sport and you're like,
mm.
bruh.
Changes have been made that are permanent.
Yeah, yeah.
And not to slight them before anyone listens to that soundbite, like these guys are it's just, it's different. It's different.
It's different for sure. For sure. I just had something on the tip of my tongue. I don't remember now. Dan?
Had to throw that disclaimer out there.
Dan, you say something smart. Go.
What my opinion on muscular women?
No, not for this podcast.
What's your phone number
joke.
again?
DMs are open. But no, I mean,
Reel it in.
I agree with a lot of what you guys said. I mean, the stories of, people coming up, and you saw a lot of that this year. You saw that with Benjamin, came onto the scene. He had competed in seasons prior, but just tore it up. And, how's he going to do at Worlds? And even now it's like, okay, well, he took second in the overall, won his class. It's like, will he win an overall? Will he win Worlds in his next season? And Eric Helms, I mean, has been on the path for over a decade now at this point, striving for it. Won his pro card this year, stepped on the world stage. I mean, yeah, all that is just super cool. And to be able to, for us at Natty News, to be able to highlight some of these awesome stories and give a platform and help out some of these people is super cool.
Even side note, we called that overall in the group chat. I remember being like, what'd I say? Brian, Dirk, Benjamin, imagine that. And James replies like, did I miss something? Like, what happened? I was like, no, just think about that overall for a minute. And yeah, that was cool to see. That just goes to show how in tune we are, is that we predicted the world's overall a week ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had also just interviewed Brian, so we'd all been spying on his page, and like, man, he is just a unit. He's just large, and we knew he was shredded too. So yeah, that's a tough. I mean, people have brought it up. Like, look at that heavyweight class, right? When Sam Akinola, who's a prior like multi-worlds champion across multiple federations, is in 5th place, it's like, oh shit, like that was not easy to get through to top 3 even,
Yep. Even Robert, like we saw him at Mr. A and we were like, damn, like he could be a threat. And he was 4th, I think.
Yeah.
Third or 4th.
Just out muscled,
Yeah, like
what do you think he would have placed with his Mr. America look? Out of curiosity, what do you guys think?
So we were,
who was 3rd?
let's see. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember, because it was Brian Botta, and then I'm forgetting who 3rd, Robert and Sam. It's probably someone that we should know. But no, to come to that point, he definitely faded, and he pointed that out in his own post, right? Like Mr. A versus Worlds him, completely different look.
A different look.
He wasn't quite as sharp. He wasn't quite as full by any means. And that once you lose that fullness when you're already that condition, it's tough. You just lose that pop, which he had at Mr. A.
Yeah.
I think that's another story. It's like, can he come back in? I don't know if he'll compete next year or compete in 2 years. Can he come back to Worlds and bring a better look and challenge for it?
And let's not take away, like, when you have cross-striated rectus femoris.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty nutty.
Sick.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, well, that's just it, right? We saw him live at Mr. A, and I think that's where we have a very specific viewpoint on a lot of things, because we see these people live, and we see things like we get sent stuff on Natty News that doesn't always get posted, and people will be like, yo, check this out, and you're like, holy shit, like, dude, you're gonna crush this. And it's exciting to see, like, obviously you want people you connect with to do well and stuff like that, but to see people not necessarily place as high as you thought, you're like, man, like, that doesn't take away from them. And as an athlete, that acknowledges the quality of the show, which is what you like to see. You know what I mean? To see the lightweight top 5 and, Benjamin and Ipsen duking it out, and then Botta and Brian side by side. It just like the again, like, we'll come back to this. Like, the show was just It was a banger. It really was. Even to see like Elkins get fourth, like that was a surprise, right? Like, obviously we talk a lot about bodybuilding, but even in the other categories, like there was a lot of just quality competitors not placed necessarily where you thought. And it wasn't that they were bad or off or whatever, but it was just like people from all over the place were coming in, and they were coming in hot.
The sport keeps elevating for sure. More and more people, more and more quality athletes. And I just got daydreaming while you were talking about that. Not even about Worlds next year, which I'm super excited for, especially since I hear tentatively it's being hosted East Coast. So we'll definitely be there in one way, shape, or form. But think Mr. A. If we could get Meshach, Bada, Levi, last year's, mixed in with Robert and Brian, throw in Berto if he's competing next year, which I think he might be. Like, imagine that. I just want that to happen one time because that would be so sick to be like 5 feet away from. Man, I want it. I need it. I'm saying it. Make it happen.
And throw Dan and James in the mix too.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would not do open bodybuilding. That's for sure. Not against those guys.
I'll do it. I'll lose, but I'll do it.
Get over there. Get over there, James.
Do it for the photos, boys.
Just jump in from the commentating table, jump in on there.
Yep. Mix it
up.
Okay. Is there anything else that we feel we need to add? Is there any constructive criticism? Like I'm trying to think of things I can say like negatively, but I'm struggling to be honest because well, I mean, obviously having Natty News there wouldn't hurt. Just saying. But outside of that, I don't know. Like I haven't heard really much negatives from it. Like it seems like a lot of people left it pretty content.
I've heard a couple things with like expediters being like a little bit like pushy, but you almost need that, right? Like you need things to stay on top. There's a fine line of like trying to find that. Like Dan's seen it where expediters, and I won't say the show because I don't want like that to be the thing of it. Like they line you up too quick and then you go and you're standing because like there's a disconnect between like the stage and expedition of it. But that's the only negative I've really heard. Everything else has been super positive. One thing that I'll be interested to see is you've hit a high and now we're changing the location of the show, right? So you can't just hit the repeat button and do the exact same things with the exact same companies. Now you have to change over to East Coast and hopefully recreate that same production value in a completely different environment. So we'll see how they do that.
Yeah. I mean, us being there immediately levels it up.
Yeah. Driving distance will be nice.
I think the emceeing with how they announced the winners could have been a little bit more I don't what's the word?
You said enthusiastic
and just like announcing creating a little bit of drama, a little bit of anticipation, just I think would have been a benefit. Other than that, I mean,
need some Bruce Buffer in the action.
It makes a difference though, right? Like when you think of like, now that I'm thinking about it, Dan mentioned it, like watching it live, it was like, and 5th place goes to 4th place, 3rd place, 2nd place, and your winner and new world champion, Brian DaCosta. Like let's get some buzz in there, you know what I mean? That's where little things like that, like as cheesy as it might sound, it does create a bit more excitement and a bit more like drama to it. Again, when you think about like the story and everything like that, like you want people to kind of be like edge of their seat, like listening to the laptop because they want to hear like, and new or and still number 3, 3, 6, like that kind of stuff. Like it makes a difference.
Yeah. Just for the fun of it, I'll say let's get some smoke going on stage next time. I want some like pyrotechnics, some smoke, the cool silhouette shots as people enter. Let's just go for it.
Let's just go for it. Just
dump the bank.
All the money. Sweet. I agree. More pyro, the better.
Explosions. Yes.
Good.
That's
all right,
that's
boys.
a good way to end.
I think that wraps it up. All right, people. Before we get rambling on stuff, it doesn't matter. We appreciate you guys watching
on the rise.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys watching along. Any of the new viewers, new followers, we appreciate you because I know in the last couple of weeks there's been a lot of new faces that maybe haven't tuned into the podcast all that much. This is us. We appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.